Bad football teams. This is your great savior, the transfer portal. Welcome into the voice of college football. We appreciate y'all being here on a Sunday night to talk about all the chaos that is the transfer portal across college football. Please lock it in and enjoy the videos that we've released. You may have noticed that earlier today we started our post-spring Power Rankings series. We have ranked the conferences, and our Power Rankings will be unveiled here in the next few days. The ACC is on the street, so check it out. Our ACC post-spring Power Rankings will be following those conference rankings with our program rankings 1 through 133 program rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. So all sorts of great series coming up like that. Also, of course, May is Great Debate Month here at the Voice of College Football. We have already given you delivered three great debates. Check them out Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Of course, we had our Big 12 and Pac-12 confrontation on Wednesday night. Check it out. A great show with two Pac-12 contributors, two from the Big 12, and the realignment possibilities. And we discussed and delved into those. And then, of course, on Thursday night, we were joined by Rick and Aya, who gave us some metrics on the program status of 10 great programs, the 10 best of the 60s and 70s. We measured those and tried to determine who won program status in the 60s and 70s in college football. And then, of course, on Friday night, we came back with another Big 12 contingent discussing the realignment possibilities, what the Big 12 is trying to accomplish, how strong is the Pac-12 as we get a day closer, as was famously said at my former employer by some of us concerning some projects and initiatives. We're one day closer. That was the pat answer when you didn't know what you were talking about, or somebody else you were addressing didn't know what they were talking about, or just didn't know because we had to tell somebody else and try to cover from some type of situation and just say, it's one day closer. I think there are still some things that are one day closer. I've been gone for 2.5 years. All right. Welcome to the Voice for College Football. And we have left the link there, both in the chat, and the link is in the description section. So please join us. We appreciate, and we also welcome your calls. I'm going to run through the top candidates in the transfer portal that are still available. Of course, the transfer portal closed on April 30th. And there are still tons of players in the transfer portal. If you have an accurate count, if you've heard, if you've seen any reports out there, 247 Sports and others who have accumulated those numbers, you can let us know there in the chat how many players are in the transfer portal. I have not seen that number. And again, April 30th was the final day for undergrads to enter the transfer portal, but that doesn't mean it's all said and done. There are a number of players that are still in there, of course, because they have just entered the transfer portal. They have not made a decision on where they will land. Again, we're going to run through some of the top transfer portal additions from recent days, and also, most importantly, the best available out there. The one, of course, that comes to mind over the past few days was Peyton Thorne, Michigan State starting quarterback over the past 2 seasons, which he led the Spartans to a top 10 finish 2 seasons ago, Peach Bowl victory, 11-2 record. And then this past season, without Kenneth Walker Jr., without Jalen Naylor, who moved on to the NFL draft, a weakened offensive line, more pressure coming from a bad defense. Not quite the year that Peyton Thorne envisioned, running around like a crazy man most of the time, eluding a pass rush. I point to the Washington game in particular as being a precursor for the Big Ten season. Michigan State did play a little bit better. They did have a few breakout games against the likes of Wisconsin and against Illinois in the Big Ten schedule. But anyway, Peyton Thorne not happy that he was being challenged as a two-time starting quarterback, and concerning and considering what was accomplished 2 years ago under Mel Tucker, Peyton Thorne believed that he should be the starting quarterback at Michigan State. He was being challenged by Noah Kim. It was still an open battle, and Peyton Thorne transfer portal. A couple days later, boom, he's on the Plains. He's now the quarterback for the Auburn Tigers and Hugh Freeze. Is that an open and shut case? I do not believe. I do think that he will win the job. I do believe that he is significantly better than anybody on campus. TJ Finley at Auburn has moved on. He has entered the transfer portal just in the last week. And so it is Peyton Thorne versus Robbie Ashford, who gained most of the snaps at one point last season until he was injured. And TJ Finley was the starting quarterback for Auburn down the stretch. Before we take our first call, would like to run down some of the best available players and also some of the guys that have recently left, recently departed. So just coming down, and this is my source. This is my source. I go right to 247 Sports on Twitter. I follow, hey, this 247 Sports, feel honored because I don't follow anyone that doesn't follow me. Generally speaking, there's a few out there that don't follow me that I follow. But other than that, that is a general rule that I have. Okay, so this one just came down. So this is why we call it transfer portal chaos. This one has only come down since I put together some of these numbers in my list right here. I've listed about 10 of the best available and also some of the guys that have recently committed and transferred to another school. And this is not even on my list. This is only 23 minutes ago posted. And there it is right there. So we've got breaking news in that former Florida State wide receiver. And of course, he was at Oregon in 2021 prior to that. And a productive wide receiver, guy who has played a really good, strong recruiting ranking coming out of high school, has not turned into any kind of a star. And that's Micah Pittman, has gone to Utah. So the Utes have added former Florida State and Oregon transfer wide receiver Micah Pittman. He leaves Florida State. So there you go. Right out of the gate, we've got a transfer since I last checked this a half hour ago. Florida State. So they lose one in Micah Pittman, of course. They possibly gain a big defensive back transfer in UAB DB Jalen Key. Jalen Key had a nice season for UAB this past year with 60 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and he's on campus at Florida State this weekend. We have just here in the last 3 hours, former Cal linebacker Trey Pastor is committed to Colorado State. So Pastor leaves Cal. He played 15 games and made 5 starts at Cal. He had 25 tackles 2 years ago, either injured or lost his job. Didn't play much last season, but 25 tackles for Cal last season. Trey Pastor also had 4 tackles for loss. And again, he goes to the Rams. We have a curious transfer here by Fresno State quarterback Jalen Henderson, who was not, of course, with Jake Haener there, the starting quarterback at Fresno State, did not project to be the starter coming up in 2023, just announced that he's verbally committed to Texas A&M. You would think, well, if he can't start at Fresno State, how is he going to start at Texas A&M? Connor Weigman is the guy, of course, there at Texas A&M. The Aggies now have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. However, Jalen Henderson, very much an athlete. So don't be surprised if he does not switch positions. Jalen Henderson runs it, catches it, in addition to playing quarterback. He's a lefty, as you can see from the picture there. Don't be surprised if he trades positions. Some have suggested I become the voice of college basketball. We will not do that tonight. Okay, Ohio State offensive lineman transfer Ben Crispin. He's committed to Kentucky. Now, Mark Stoops, of course, has built strong offensive line play at Kentucky since they've been good, circa, 2016, 17. However, Kentucky's offensive line play last year was pretty bad. Pretty bad. Just ask Will Levis. Well, Ben Chrisman didn't play much at Ohio State. He only played 9 snaps. So not a lot of experience there in the Big Ten. However, of course, as you would expect at Ohio State, top-notch recruit. Going back in his class, a 7th rated interior offensive lineman in his class, a top 125 player. Ben Chrisman goes to Kentucky. We also have USC landing Alabama cornerback transfer Traquan Fagans. He was a top 125 player in his class. He was the 14th rated cornerback in the country. Didn't play much for Alabama, but USC lands him. And we all know Alex Grinch needs defensive players. And USC, for as awful as they were on that side of the football in 22, they were even worse in 21. They actually picked up and kind of patchworked the defense with transfers on all 3 levels last season, but still weak in the trenches, poor tackling team, and they should be much better this year. They have improved significantly on paper during this offseason on the defensive side. We've got, this is breaking news, but Colorado needs players. Colorado needs players, folks. They get one here in former Southern Utah safety Roderick Ward, commits to CU. Don't know much about him. Don't watch a whole lot of Southern Utah football. Oh, yeah, Colorado has already landed a number of Florida State players on the defensive side of the ball, and they are set to land, apparently, according to 247 Sports. Others, defensive lineman Bishop Thomas, the latest former Seminole to pick Colorado as his transfer destination. And again, the 2 that we talked about on the Florida State show last weekend are guys that were good players at Florida State. They contributed, they played a role, they were part-time starters. So CU has fortified its defense via Tallahassee. North Texas tight end transfer Varkees Gums recommits to Arkansas. Another Colorado pickup. There it is. You got Baylor wide receiver Jalen Ellis. Well, he committed to West Virginia. He's transferred now, and he is going to go to Boulder as well. All right, so maybe a misnomer here about fixing your teams, folks, is that how much real talent is out there, how much productive talent or proven talent, and not much. So this all looks great. This all looks amazing that, yeah, teams can just fix themselves via this crazy wide open free agency that has been likened to NFL free agency, and it's not. It's been reined in that there are certain times of the year that the transfer portal is open. So like NFL's free agency, finally, we have seen some normalcy, some restrictions put on this, some guidelines in terms of the timing. So that's great that coaches don't have to be concerned with at any point somebody walking out the door. On the other hand, let's understand that this has gained a whole lot of attention, and for good reason. It should. We're doing a live stream dedicated, devoted to the transfer portal. However, let's also understand that these are not marquee players. Most of them are not marquee players. The first player that hit the transfer portal of note and then was signed, of course, was Bear Alexander from Georgia as a top 75 recruit and a guy who threw around Max Duggan in the national championship game during garbage time and gained a lot of acclaim based on his former team, Georgia. He played for the 2-time defending national champions based on his recruiting ranking. And of course, he was wanted by everybody in the country. So yes, that deserved attention, but Bear Alexander has not proven anything consistently play to play, being a rotational guy, playing 35 snaps in a college football game, a big time game, not proven to be a good player yet. He's a good talent. He's a tremendous talent, but he's not proven to be a great player. And people were just going crazy. Is that a good addition for USC? Absolutely. They addressed a need. They addressed it with a premier talent, but Bear Alexander's not proven anything. So most of these players are not, most of them, there are some really good polished players out there, but most of them are not great players. So you are not going to fix your team. You're going to get mostly guys like this. Mostly. Again, there are some really good players out there, and we will address those guys. Keon Stewart, TCU corner, commits to Michigan State. Well, he didn't play much at TCU. He had 14 tackles last year. He filled in at TCU, so they're not getting a number one corner, number 2 or 3 corner. Maybe he'll be able to play a little bit more at Michigan State. That's obviously why he's leaving. Then we can never discount the NIL portion of this. That means so much to all of this. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you being here. We're talking transfer portal. We would love to get your comments and questions there in the chat. Of course, you're going to get my attention with a super chat. Of course, we've got tons of comments coming in. And of course, we do address a ton of questions and comments. But the super chat is available to you. And we hope you would jump on that. It's a huge night here at the Voice of College Football. So we are going through the transfer portal and taking your calls here. Keep in mind that at 8 o'clock Eastern time, in just about 40 minutes, Tim Prangley, Rick Anaya bring to you Trojan Conquest. Trojan Conquest is coming up. Trojan Conquest live. Make it part of your Sunday night here every weekend, talking USC football. That's at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, over on the USC channel. And then we've got a special edition of USC Live coming up with Tony Altamore and myself coming up tonight. And if you've seen Tony display, this is not going to be a debate. This is not part of debate month, but Tony's going to be joining us on the various team channels and going to be rolling out tons of metrics and history concerning the football program, the athletics department, their performance throughout the years and currently, most importantly, and the academics at those universities. So we're starting with USC tonight. We call it USC Program Breakdown. That's coming up at 9 Eastern, and that would be 6 Pacific here at the Voice of College Football. I'm going to take a call right after this comment. Again, Peyton Thorne being the big addition over the last few days. He entered the transfer portal from Michigan State on the same day that Keon Coleman did. Keon Coleman caught 58 passes last season at Michigan State, 7 touchdowns. He's a really good wide receiver. He has visited LSU and Florida State, has Keon Coleman. He's from Louisiana. And again, has been a primary target of Peyton Thorne's for the last 2 years. There was some thought that he might go to Auburn. There was conversation on social media about Keon Coleman not being happy necessarily with Peyton Thorne for certain reasons, but then he entered the transfer portal on the same day, and there was thought that maybe he would follow Peyton Thorne to Auburn. So you can't believe everything you read. We don't know at this point. 1 year ago, of course, we had it was CJ Williams, the Oklahoma wide receiver, entered the transfer portal, and it was assumed that he was going to join Caleb Williams at USC because they were buddies. They played together the previous season. CJ Williams caught something in the realm of 35 passes from Caleb Williams, as they were both freshmen at Oklahoma the year before. And people thought it would automatically happen. Well, it eventually did. And Williams did follow Williams to USC, so that we may have the same situation here. However, most folks are reporting strong ties for Keon Coleman to either Florida State or LSU. I would make a prediction on Florida State. They just lost Micah Pittman. There's a place there for Keon Coleman to be a great running mate for Johnny Wilson at Florida State. All right, we're going to get to some more of these as we go through. But we're going to take our first call here at the Voice of College Football. We have left the link in the chat. It's at the top of the chat, so you can grab the link there. We've also left it in the description section of the video, so the call-in link is there. It's also on Twitter, so follow me on Twitter. You see it right there on the banner there, MarkRogersTV. That's where you can follow me on Twitter, talking college football all the time, and I sneak in a few other things there as well. All right, first caller tonight. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Chris.
How are you, Mark?
How are you?
Good. Oh, I don't want to You want to talk transfer portal? I really haven't been following it, so I can't really say anything about that. Can you?
Well, what would you like to talk about?
Well, no, I was gonna just throw some information your way, and
Sure.
you can just make of it what you want to use it for, I guess. I went ahead and I just for curiosity purposes, I calculated the gap, I guess, the gap between Big 12 and SEC. I just thought I'd share it with you. It's like 12 points gap.
Let me ask you a question before you go through that gap. Is that a current gap or is that a historical gap?
Well, I based it on the last year, and actually, I don't know how close that is because I think I actually included a couple teams that I think should be in the Big 12 that aren't. So it might actually be wider than that, but it's probably the smallest it is 12 points. It might actually be wider, but there's at least a 12-point gap between the Big 12 and the SEC. I just thought you might want to, just for information's sake, I guess. I don't know if that's a large gap or not. That's 12 percentage points, I guess, between the two conferences at least. I just thought you might be interested in that.
So is that the largest gap of any gaps
Well, I
between
don't
any of
know.
the major conferences?
Well, we had that discussion about potential realignment, and I threw the idea out there that they should just merge together. Well, what that would do if they did it would lower the SEC by at least 6%. And it would raise the Big 12 by at least 6%. That's assuming that they wanted to do it. I mean, that's kind of the, if they ever, I mean, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying if they did, if they decided to join, band together or whatever, that would drop the SEC by 6% at least. I don't know if that helps or not.
Well, that's very interesting. But it's, again, Chris, the Big 12 and joining the SEC, that's not going to take place.
Well, I mean, it might not happen. I didn't really like the way you guys treated it, though. It was like a terrible idea. I don't know if it's a terrible idea or not, but it's something to look at because I think when you have different conferences, if they have the same objective, I guess, and I don't know if they do or not. I mean, you would know more about that than I would, but let's just pretend that they do. Like Brent Yormark, I guess, and who's the SEC? It's not Slive. Who is it? Anyway,
Greg Sankey.
Okay, Sankey. I'm sorry. I should know that, but I don't. Okay. Anyway, I'm just thinking in terms of like practicalness, I guess. Like I said, the 12 points, I mean, I don't know if that's a wide gap or not. I mean, I know, for example, I think the American, they're going to lose because of the teams they lost and the teams that they gained, they're losing like 7%. So that's kind of a comparison, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought you might want to know.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris.
And actually, it actually might be closer to the same amount because, like I said, I threw Missouri and Arkansas in there with the Big 12 because that's kind of where I think they should be, and so the gap actually might be bigger than that, but it's at least 12 between the two.
Very good. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the call. Call back anytime.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right. We did have a couple other callers on the line, so the lines are free right now. We did have 2 on the line, so please call back. Our buddy Jason is letting us know that Michigan has just landed 4-star wide receiver Channing Goodwin. So the more traditional edition of football players through the high school ranks. Yeah, they still do that. Channing Goodwin out of Charlotte, North Carolina. 38th rated wide receiver in the country, comfortably in the top 300, according to 247 Sports at number 241. 7th rated player in the state of North Carolina, chooses Michigan. He had 17 offers, 6'1", 180. What I always find interesting here is the difference between the 247 rating and the composite. He's going to be re-ranked along with everybody else here in the next month to 6 weeks. There are a lot of camps in May and June, and the services re-rank everyone 4 times per year. Every quarter, they will re-rate everyone and rank them again. And most of the players that get plucked up by the best schools in the country, there's a reason they're getting plucked up. So most people interpret it the other way, that, oh, he got signed by Michigan or he committed to Michigan, therefore his ranking is going to shoot through the roof. And there is some validity to that statement. However, it also has to do with, well, Michigan pursued him and offered him along with these other 16 schools that we're going to run down because he's really good, and his ranking, he's not being accurately evaluated right now, and they're honing their ranking as his experience and his exposure to scouts increases, of course. And he still has one more high school football season to play, but he's committed to Michigan out of North Carolina, and he is outside the top 500 in terms of the 247 Sports composite. So there's a huge gap between what currently 247 Sports rates Channing Goodwin and the other services on. 3 rivals. And there you have it. 17 offers. And again, many people will say, go to the offer list. That tells you a lot. And what it tells us here is that Michigan by far is the best program on this list. So is Channing Goodwin good enough to play at Michigan? There's still some really good schools there that have obviously signed tons of really good players, South Carolina and North Carolina. I would say South Carolina is the best recruiting program on this list, aside from Michigan. Yeah, I would say it's South Carolina, then North Carolina, then a collection of Pitt, Louisville, and NC State. So he's not being offered currently, or did not, and probably won't be, by the likes of Alabama, Georgia, and on down the line by the elites. But that's not all we need to look at. Of course, Michigan has made a good find here, and they have gotten a commitment from a 4 or 3-star wide receiver, depending on your service. Good stuff right there. So let's get back to our transfer portal talk. And we were looking at some of the best available. So let's give this a look. So again, I want to emphasize here, the transfer portal is cool, interesting, intriguing, exciting, annoying, aggravating, depending on your perspective, depending on who you're losing or gaining. We will keep it in perspective. However, most of the time you don't pick up your star players in the transfer portal. I see this going forward, and I think it's going to settle down, much like free agency in the NFL. You build a roster through the NFL draft. That is where the bulk of your production is going to come from. That's how you build the team, the core of the team, through the NFL draft. And then you use free agency to address needs. I think the transfer portal is going to settle into the same type of process. And so this is what we've got here. Zachary Franklin off the top of the board. I apologize if you can't read this. Let me blow it up. Zachary Franklin. I wanted to get all the numbers in, but so Zachary Franklin is a senior wide receiver. He's played a ton of football, and he has been so productive at Texas San Antonio. So this brings me, he's a perfect example of what we've seen in the transfer portal. I made this statement, a couple of years ago, but more so after now that I've seen it play out, because we are now coming up on 3 years that the transfer portal has really impacted college football with a ton of transfers. And we're basically seeing, aside from quarterbacks, put quarterbacks in a different category because only one can play. So if you're an offensive lineman and you can't find snaps at your current school, and they want 5 starting offensive linemen, of course, there's 5 starting at all times, and they're fairly interchangeable depending on the skill set of the player and depending on the position. Obviously, there are interior and there's the center position. Not everybody can play center. And then the offensive tackle position, obviously, you need better footwork and you need to be a quicker player, better reach, better extension with the arms and so forth. So they're not all interchangeable, but they are to a certain extent. So if you can't play on your current team and you can't find some snaps on the top 7 or 8, well, you're probably going to need to transfer down. Quarterback's different. Obviously, if you're not playing, you could be a top 25 quarterback in the nation. You could be Cade McNamara, who I rated at the time to be about a top 35 quarterback in college football. You need to go somewhere and play because you're not beating out a top 5 or 10 talent at your position. Talent J.J. McCarthy, top 10 talent at your position. J.J. McCarthy, top 20 or 25 quarterback right now, something like that, until he proves otherwise. Really good quarterback. So again, so we're seeing two types in the transfer portal. We are seeing, and I said this again 6 weeks ago, I pounded this home, that I expected when the transfer portal opened, and then we saw it on the first day, first couple days, players who were top recruits, who were like top 150 players from the 2022 class and did not get on the field in 2022. And now they've gone through a full season. They didn't play. Now they went through winter workouts and spring practice. And then they saw the writing on the wall. Okay, I'm going to go into my sophomore season or my redshirt freshman season, and it doesn't look like I'm going to play again. Okay, transfer portal. And we saw a ton of those, led by an Oregon contingent the first day of the transfer portal. So that's one bucket of transfers. Then you got this other bucket of transfers that is awfully intriguing, and I really credit these guys. You see them all over the place, especially at offensive and defensive line. This is where you see it. You see the Braden Fisk example at Florida State. You see the kid Pegman, can't think of his first name, who transferred from Wyoming to USC, Pegnon. You see these various players where they were, for whatever reason, maybe they hadn't filled out yet, whatever the reason, they were underregarded, underevaluated, not given much consideration coming out of high school, 2-star, low 3-star, and they wound up at a MAC school. They wound up at a group of 5 program, and not usually Houston or Cincinnati or UCF. They landed at Georgia Southern, or again, a MAC directional school, somewhere like that. And what they did was they went to work, they developed themselves, they ran into some really good coaching, they developed themselves, and they took opportunity and they ran with it, and they turned into a really, really good player. And now they're ready to jump. Now they think, okay, got one more season left. I got to make a push for the NFL draft. First of all, I want to play in big games. I'm tired of playing in front of 18,000 people. I want to play on a national stage. I want to play with the best of the best. I want to test myself, and I also want to prepare myself for the NFL draft. And so playing at a Georgia Southern and getting obliterated by Tennessee and then by somebody else in the SEC non-conference, and then playing inside of our conference is not going to prepare me. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it. Plus, it doesn't prepare me for the next level. Playing an SEC schedule or a Power 5 schedule is going to prepare me for the NFL draft. And most likely, now let's all understand that not every Power 5 assistant coach is better than every Power or a group of 5 assistant coach, but most of them are. That's a reason why they're on the Power 5 level. Most of the Power 5 head coaches are better, or at least at this point have proven more. Of course, well, they've almost all proven more, but they are better coaches, mostly, not all of them. So most likely they're going to run into better position coaches that are going to develop them for the NFL. So this is the other bucket of players, the guys that have starred at the group of 5 level, and they are ready to roll, and they're ready to go somewhere and prove themselves and play against the best and sharpen their skills, get ready for the NFL draft. Perfect example right here at the top of the board. Zachary Franklin, Texas San Antonio, Jeff Traylor's program, one of the best in the group of 5, of course. Back-to-back conference championships. Franklin, 94 catches last year, 94 receptions, 15 touchdowns. The season before, 81 catches, 12 touchdowns. The season before that, 49 and 7. As a freshman, he caught 38 passes and 3 touchdowns. He stepped onto campus and like he was getting out of the car and somebody threw a football at his head and he caught it. He never stopped catching passes. Do the quick math. 175, 224. If I can do the math, he's at 260 62 receptions in his career. 37 touchdowns. Zakari Franklin looking for a landing spot. Jordan Hudson, TCU, he was one of the first to enter the portal after spring practice there at TCU, and he's looking for a home. Jordan Hudson only caught 14 passes at TCU. However, he did catch some big balls in the college football playoff and in big games for TCU. I think he had 3 receptions against Michigan for big yardage. Keon Coleman, we addressed his situation at Michigan State. He is being tagged for Florida State and for LSU. The call-in line, if you'd like to join the show, ask me a question, make a comment, talk about anything concerning college football. We're focused on the transfer portal. However, we will talk about anything concerning college football. Please give me a call. The call-in link is in the chat. I will drop it in there again. It's also in the description section of the video. I'm so proud of myself, people. Somebody call in because it's in the description section of the video, and I never remember to do that. But I've turned over a new leaf, and the link is in the description section. I also left it on Twitter for our friends on Twitter. We should probably simulcast on Twitter and pull some people in from there. So I will have to start to do that as well. But so I have left the link in the chat, and we've got Jalil Tucker. So case in point, folks, and I know some guys have gone off the board, some really good players like Bear Alexander, like Micah Pittman now, like Peyton Thorne. However, case in point, we make a huge deal out of the transfer portal. It is a big deal. However, you are not going to fix your team unless you are possibly Colorado. You are not going to fix a bad team through the transfer portal at this stage. This is according to On3, and this is their 4th best available player in the portal, Jalil Tucker. What did he do at Oregon? Nothing. He's a really high recruit who was a redshirt freshman. Didn't do anything at Oregon. Nothing. He's the 4th highest rated player. I would still love him to be on my team because of his potential, and especially if I'm hurting at cornerback. Absolutely. Bring him on. Let's get him some reps, see what he can do. But this is not a Zakari Franklin who's caught 8,000 passes. Brady Allen, quarterback and backup of, well, technically a backup to Aiden O'Connell at Purdue, but he was not the guy that was going to step in. Redshirt freshman there at Purdue. He's in the transfer portal. And again, the 5th rated player right now. This is On3. There are other ratings out there. Just wanted to go through this list. Now, Isaac Ukwu, the player out of James Madison, who may be going to Ole Miss. He's a redshirt senior. He's off the edge. Now, he's a producer. He's produced. He's played. And Ukwu had a nice season last year with 10.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, batted down 3 passes. One of my favorite plays in football, the batted down pass. It's one of my favorite plays in football, unless it's happening to my team. But I love blocked punts. I love strip sacks. I love passes batted down at the line. There was a bowl game, and you got to be a serious junkie to remember this game, but this was a bowl game that I believe was the precursor to the Quick Lane Bowl. So whatever it was called before that, I can't remember. It was the Motor City Bowl. Motor City Bowl became the Quick Lane Bowl. I think it was maybe the first Quick Lane Bowl. Maryland and Boston College. That Boston College defensive line, and about 3 of those guys are playing in the NFL right now, were batting every pass, every other pass. They were batting it down. They had like 9 batted passes in that game, and I think 1 went for a touchdown. All right, that was on a side note. Insignificant bowl game from 2016. All right, Cameron Johnson. Much talk about him coming out of Houston as an offensive tackle. On 3 really has him heavy to USC. They've got Arkansas in the mix. Jalen Key, we talked about Jalen Key. UAB defensive back, 60 tackles last year. Tallahassee, Florida. I think there's a university in Tallahassee. I believe, but look at UAB's projection there. 100% to Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin, look at this. Jalen Key, the defensive back out of UAB, and look at this. Isaac Ukwu, the edge rusher out of James Madison. And James Madison was a good team last year. James Madison, have they belonged in FBS play? Do you think they belonged? They went 8-3 last year in their first year in FBS, and they played well against good teams. They beat some of the perennial powers in the Sun Belt last season. Prince Collie. Notre Dame to where, we don't know. Prince Collie, linebacker. I got to say, don't know much about him. Trey Amos, the cornerback. And we've got Antonio Carter out of Orlando, Ole Miss. And he is projected to Kentucky. I'm just going to blast through these real quick. If there's anybody who catches your eye, please leave it in the chat. Give me a call. Again, the link is in the chat. It's in the description section of the video. It's also on Twitter. Sean Woods, offensive tackle. Casey Thompson. Okay. Casey Thompson, the obvious destination for him when he entered the transfer portal. And this is how things don't work out for you. Consider the plight of one Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson, the first time I saw Casey Thompson play was in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, and he looked sick. His footwork was amazing in the pocket. He was throwing from all sorts of platforms. He looked like Matthew Stafford, a poor man's Matthew Stafford, but still, he could throw from all sorts of different angles, and he was throwing dimes. And then, of course, Texas got its crop of quarterbacks, and Casey Thompson started the next season. He won a battle with, who would that have been? That would have been Hudson Card at the time. And he led the Big 12 in touchdown passes with 24. Of course, that's an offensive league, so the top touchdown producer at quarterback should have like 45, but that is passe in regards to the Big 12. The Big 12 is no different than everybody else at this point. Anyway, Casey Thompson, that's another subject. Casey Thompson, 24 touchdown passes, led the Big 12, goes to Nebraska, was having a decent season, was having a good season, a solid season, decent, got hurt late. That completely took Trey Palmer out of his game, off his game, even though he became the first Nebraska wide receiver with 1,000 yards in a long time. But Trey Palmer taken out of his game, still drafted. But anyway, Casey Thompson did not play the final 3 games, still is suffering from a rotator cuff injury. So I don't know if I don't think that's of concern just based on that, because he did get hurt. It was projected that he was going to miss spring practice, so that's not a big concern. But so for a second consecutive year, the starting quarterback at Nebraska says goodbye, and it was Adrian Martinez going to Kansas State, where he was off to a good start. He was playing pretty well. Of course, he got hurt, and Kansas State did great things, winning the Big 12. So for Casey Thompson, I thought the initial landing spot, not that I made this prediction, but the most glaring big-time program with a quarterback need when he hit the transfer portal was Auburn. That's no longer the case. Peyton Thorne, Casey Thompson, who do you think? Toss that one up in the air. Flip a coin on those two guys. Casey Thompson, Peyton Thorne, who's a better quarterback? So he would have to be in competition with not only Thorne, but Robbie Ashford at Auburn. So I don't know about Casey Thompson. Does On3 have a projection here? They are looking at, well, Auburn. They may want to update that projection. Anthony Campbell, Cody Epps, the wide receiver. We talked about him. We did not. I was thinking of somebody else. Caleb Johnson, offensive tackle. Anybody else jump here? Lance Robinson. We talked about him on other shows out of Houston and where he might be headed. Logan Diggs is a running back out of Notre Dame who may be going to Ole Miss or South Carolina based on the on3 projection. There's the Ben Chrisman placement there from Ohio State. He's decided to go to Kentucky. That just came out in the last few hours. Larry Nixon for our fine friends there from the U. Projected to possibly Cincinnati or the U from North Texas. Xavier Henderson, wide receiver out of Columbus High School in Miami. Remember him playing at Florida. So Xavier Henderson is a guy that's he's played fairly well in the SEC. I'm guessing he had about 25 to 35 catches last year for Florida. Kevon Lee. Remember Kevon Lee? He used to get a lot of playing time at Penn State in 2020 and 2021 before the arrival of Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, Kevon Allen. But of course, he's been pushed down the depth chart. And so On3 is projecting Kevon Lee to go to Mississippi State. Milton Wright out of Purdue. Milton Wright's a good player. Milton Wright's in the portal, and Milton Wright is from Louisville. Where would you think he might wind up? He played for Jeff Brom. All right, folks, we wanted to run through the transfer portal and talk about the guys, again, that have recently made a decision. And then also the guys, of course, that are still out there. And Zachary Franklin, from a statistical standpoint, and also the rating service there at On3 says he's number one in terms of who's available, is going to be one to look out for. Miami needs wide receivers. The Canes are void at wide receiver. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I jump into the chat and it's Ohio State and Michigan fans arguing about trophies and arguing about such. Surprise, surprise, surprise. John, thank you so much for the reminder to everyone. And here it is. Grab the Amazon link that we provide. You shop Amazon already, right? Of course you do. Some of you say, I don't. And you know what? Some of you are lying and others of you are telling the truth. And if you don't shop on Amazon, you know what? Good for you. You're bucking trends all over the place. That is great. And I'm being sincere about that. That is phenomenal because Amazon's making plenty of money. But hey, that they've become the standard. They've done an amazing job, of course, building an empire times 1,000. So the Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos, and John has provided it there in the chat. And what you need to do there, please just grab the Amazon link, put it somewhere where you will remember it. And it's the same shopping experience. You know what I did the other day? I was on the phone with a friend and I said, will you do me a favor? Grab the Amazon link in one of my videos and use it. And they said, absolutely. I said, is there any issue? Are you having any type of problems ordering what you want, navigating through the site, anything? Nope. No issues. Because I don't always know, as the person who originates these things, and I get a different view of it, of course, because I'm originating it. So obviously when I use it, I don't know what it looks like to all of you to use the link that I've provided. So I have tried this out in the past with other friends and said, hey, can you grab that Amazon link? And I just want to make sure that I'm not promoting something that's difficult for people to use. And I've never had anyone say that in any way it's difficult to use. We major on intelligent debate here at the Voice of College Football. Charisse, Michigan sucks. We're having a talent discussion. Mozart's Ghost, thank you so much for being a YouTube member. That brings us to our YouTube memberships. We have set this up in such a way that you can go to Patreon. Go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, join everything that we've got available there, including the Discord. You're going to get my predictions in a few months. Those are going to be worth shoot. If you're looking to make money, I'm not asking that you really rely on my predictions, but still at the same time, I've got like a 40-year track record, and you would have won money like 38 out of the 40 seasons. But anyway, yes, Patreon or the YouTube memberships. We got YouTube memberships. Just go to the front of the page. You see where it says join. Click on that. There you go. Did TCU have top 5 talent? Well, they did not have top 5 talent, and they won a football game. Now, I'm not discrediting TCU in any such way, but TCU was also not a top 5 team in the country last year. They were on the cusp. So there's a difference between making the playoff, and they did win a game. Give them tons of credit. They are on a short list of teams that have won a college football playoff game. They're on a short list. However, where would you have ranked TCU when you take the entirety of the season? I would rank them. This is not where I did rank them. I ranked them based on what they earned, but based on how good they were near the bottom of the top 10. They were near the bottom of the top 10. And I don't know if they had to play another season with that team, things broke right for them. Things really broke right for them. And they did an amazing job of taking advantage of those situations and taking advantage of breaks. But a lot went right for TCU. And yes, so TCU, this isn't like a situation like if you had an argument over how good teams were in the NFL and somebody went 14-3 and then they won 3 playoff games and went to the Super Bowl and lost by 8 touchdowns. And you were like, well, look at all this that they proved. Well, TCU beat the likes of Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, Kansas State in the regular season by this much. So college football's different. TCU lined up against a bunch of top 40 teams, and they beat them by a whisker, and they made it to the playoffs. And then they played a remarkable game. Give them all the credit in the world. They played a remarkable game, won the playoff game, and then, yeah. So TCU did not have top 5 talent, but I am reading into that, okay, well, they were a top 5 team. Yeah, they earned it with wins and losses, a top 5 ranking, but they were not a top 5 team. Wet blanket, yes, I know I'm offending you by piling on the Big 12. They did beat the big bad, whatever you got there, Big 10 champions. Yes, they did. Absolutely. They should be given every credit for that. Again, if you look at the entirety of the season, and you can also put this on the Big 12 as this being a strength of the Big 12, that they were able to challenge what was the best team in the Big 12 for all that time, for the entire season, even though Kansas State won the championship. But obviously TCU was the best team for the regular season. That you can either look at it one way or the other. You can look at it as TCU skated by a lot of marginal teams, or you can look at it as the Big 12 was really strong and really deep, and there were a lot of good teams that challenged TCU. I am doing my best to look at it realistically based on the performance, based on the level of play on the field, not just the 13-2 record, to say yes. If the argument, I believe, started with Ohio State and Michigan fans going back and forth about talent, and then Mozart's Ghost makes a good point that TCU was able to blow past this recruiting ranking and achieve great things, but their ranking and their record belied where they actually placed and how good they actually were in college football. Jason, love these comments. Ohio State fan, serious question. If you can't beat Michigan with a 19th ranked class, how do you expect to beat them with the number one class? Well, let's all understand a lot right here. First of all, that 19th ranked class didn't impact that game that much. That class impacted that game less than any other class on the Michigan roster, obviously. That was the freshman class. Just like this freshman class, if Michigan hauls in the number one recruiting class in the country, which I would put a pretty healthy bet that they won't have the number one class in the country, that they are not going to maintain the number one class in the country. We'll look at the recruiting rankings here in a second. But Ohio State this next season will not be playing the number one recruiting class. Now, there could be all sorts of players on that class that will have an impact on that game, but that class is going to have more impact in 2024 and 2025. So let's look at these recruiting rankings because, first of all, we know what they mean right now. They're not completely invalid, but they're also not the end all be all. Like, this is everything. So let's also understand that the recruiting rankings aren't perfect. So when all is said and done, you could have the number one ranked class in the country, and that could turn out to be the 7th best class in the country. But we know it's really good. There's no way you're going to pull in the number one recruiting class in the country and it turns out to be the 40th best class in the country. It's probably going to be one of the top 3 or 4. And the same if you've got the number 2, you got the number 3, 4, etc. We know what happened to Notre Dame. At this point last season, remember, at this point, mid-May of 2022, who had the number one recruiting class in the country? Notre Dame. They finished what, 10th? Okay, so this all looks really good for Michigan, and it's been an outstanding recruiting offseason for Michigan. There's no getting away. There's no getting around that. Outstanding job by Jim Harbaugh and his staff. Let's also understand that we've got a Michigan class that is 15 commits. Ohio State is 13. Georgia has 11. Michigan has 1 5-star. Of course, that's the quarterback. 10 4-stars, 4 3-stars. Let's look at the average player ranking. So why is this important, Mark? You need players, right? So it's a combination of quantity and quality, right? You've got to bring in really, really highly rated players to have a high ranked class, but you also have to bring in quantity. So it's both. So Michigan right now is doing both. But understand, all things being equal, and I don't know what the numbers are with scholarships right now. I know Ohio State is only 2 over the limit, is what I was told by our buddies on the Buckeye show the other day, that Ohio State is only 2 scholarships over the limit, which seems like they got some work to do, and they do, but most of the teams out there are way over the limit. 8 players, 10 players, 12 players. Ohio State's only 2. I don't know what Michigan, where they stand right now. So Michigan's got the number one class in the country. They've got an average player rating of 91.6. Ohio State at 93 plus. Georgia at 94.4. Whoo! Who do you think will probably finish with the number one class in the country? Because all things being equal, let's say they all sign 25 players. That means in these next 10 selection, and let's say nobody flips. Michigan gets all 15 of these players, Ohio State 13, Georgia 11. And we know somebody's going to flip. My guess would be out of those, and unless players flip from the elites, I can't prove that statistically, but I'm going to guess that that's the case. Less players flip from the elites because they have less elite programs to go to. So you're not going to flip from Ohio State and go to Toledo. You're not going to flip from Michigan and go to Rutgers. So there's only a few places that are going to pull you in. Now you may flip from, like, you may commit to TCU and then have an outstanding senior season and flip to Texas. So the point is that this player average is going to play into the numbers. Do a little math here. Figure it out. That if you have 15 committed and they all sign and you're at 91.6 and you've got 10 more players, how much better is Michigan going to have to recruit on average player ranking than Ohio State and Georgia to hit their average player ranking? And again, this could turn out where Michigan signs 25 players and Ohio State only signs 21. And Ohio State could have a higher average player rating and Michigan still finishes with a higher class. Again, it's both. But think about this. Use this as an example. Let's do easy math here. Let's say Michigan, they've got 15 commits. Let's just double that. They're not going to sign 30 players, but this makes the math easy. 2 times as many players as what they've got committed right now. And let's say Georgia continues on its current path of 94.4. And they probably will basically maintain that. What does mathematicians out there, what would Michigan have to do if everybody doubles their class in size? What would Michigan have to do to catch Georgia? If Georgia stays at 94.4, Michigan's at 91.6, Michigan's average player rating to reach Georgia would have to be what? To average a 94. If they're at 91 right now, they'd have to average a 97 player rating for everybody else that they get a commitment from. And they don't have that many commitments. They're not going to double that. So they probably have to average like a 99. Follow me? Is everybody following the math there? Michigan would have to average about a 99 player rating to keep up with Georgia. So I will make a wager with anyone that Michigan will not finish with the number one class in the country. Some folks are they're a bit disgruntled that they've got to do some math. I did the math for you, so I was just hoping that you would follow along, that you would do the math. But I did it for you, and of course, you know where you are. You're at the voice of college football, so you know I'm the voice of college football. You are the voice of college football. Together, we are the voice of college football. This is who we are. We're a community of voices, the voice of college football. So I'll do the math. You got a voice, you got a link, you can call the show. But I just worked it out for you of what Michigan needs to do to maintain the number one class in the country. So they're not going to do that. And it's not that big a deal. It's so funny to me that Well, it is a big deal. If you get the number one class in the country, that means you did a damn good job of recruiting players and you brought in an amazing class. But if you bring in the number 4 class in the country and you're really, if that coach and his name is, well, you could, if his name's Nick Saban or Dabo Sweeney or really any of the top guys, I put enough faith in that they know what they're doing that, hey, if they are number 4 and they're ecstatic with their class, that's as good as a number 1 class. And it's so funny to me that, let's say Michigan finishes at number 4. The amount of boasting will be so minimized compared to if they would finish number 1. And I'm not ganging up on Michigan fans. This is for every college football fan base. If you follow me on Twitter, you will have noticed, for anybody out there that thinks I'm a homer, which is the most ridiculous claim that could be made, that I was calling Ohio State to be the dumb fan base of the day about a week ago. For various reasons, and I explained that on here the other day. So, Michigan fans, you should be just as happy if you're following it, if you're locked in, if you're following it, if you're step for step with what's going on, and you believe in Jim Harbaugh, you believe in your position coaches, you believe in your development program. If you finish with the number 4 class, you should be basically just as happy as the number 1 class. Maybe not quite as happy because that gets the headlines, number 1 class. For those people that don't follow college football to the T, they're going to see on the bottom line on ESPN and Fox and whoever runs the bottom line, Michigan, number 1 recruiting class in the country. And if they finish number 4, they may get on there somewhere. So it is a big deal from a PR standpoint, but also from, most likely, if you finish with the number 1 class, you will have a better class than the number 4 class, most likely. All right. As Jason says right here, if you can't develop them, it's pointless. Well, I do think that that's the point that most of these coaches and their staffs have, is that they are going to develop them. And the teams, the programs that get the great talent do largely develop them. Who is not developing their players? Well, to the degree that they bring in that type of talent, I can only think of one program that has been a gross, just disgusting, pathetic producer of talent based on what they produced and what they've developed. And that's Texas. So if a Michigan fan is going to make a claim that, well, you got to develop them, and they're thinking Ohio State, well, Ohio State does develop them. They're churning out more NFL draft selections than anybody outside of Alabama and now Georgia in the last 2 years. So Michigan is joining the big boys. So congratulations to Michigan. At least if this continues, Michigan has joined the big boys. They have they've raised their game to join the big boys club. So Michigan, you should be proud. But you are not going to finish with the number 1 class. If I am wrong, certainly bring this recording back to me in 8 months, and we will talk about it then. And then it all depends on the way it plays out on the field, of course, at the time. But Michigan, you're no longer bringing in the number 15 classes, number 19 classes. But my guess is Michigan's going to bring in the, I think, number 4 class. Larry Pilgrim. Now, I don't know if this is a prediction. Larry says, and thank you for the contribution, Larry. We appreciate you. So Utah fan Larry says Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, USC top 5. I believe he's talking about recruiting. That might be his prediction, or that might be the top 5 player average. Let me look at this. Right now, the averages say that Georgia's got the number one class and Ohio State's 2. And look at that. Right now, whoa, no. Florida, look at that. You know who's taking a lot of heat right now in SEC circles is Billy Napier. Well, Billy Napier had a bad season last year, and Billy Napier did not develop his quarterback, Anthony Richardson, but we shall wait and see as to whether Anthony Richardson's going to be developed, period, by anybody. And Billy Napier only had one season with him. And there have been a lot of great coaches. Woody Hayes, Pete Carroll come to mind, that had Dabo Swinney, that had Nick Saban, who had a rough first season, 6-7, 7-6 type seasons. Pete Carroll, 6-6, rough first seasons. We rush to judgment. Billy Napier, look at that. He's only got 8 commits, but man, 4 5-stars, 3 4-stars. He has the second best class in the country by per player rating. And then comes South Carolina, number 2, and Ohio State's number 3, then South Carolina. Michigan is, I guess, number 4. Yeah. And then it dips into the high 80s. Oh, Alabama. We shouldn't forget about jolly old St. Nick there. Let's never forget about Alabama. Yes, with this lowly number 19 class in the country. 6 commits. There you go. Michigan 15, Ohio State 13, etc. Notre Dame's got 14, LSU 14. We've seen this play out before, have we not? How many times have we seen this play out before? Alabama's got the 19th class. Thank you, Uncle Rico. You can sort by, yes, I'm giving everyone whiplash here. Can I sort? It doesn't say that I can. I can't do it. It's not, I don't see that. So anyway, my point on Alabama is that they are lurking and they are doing what they typically do. They are building relationships with these players. And I'm not going to speak to the NIL. It's going on. It's going on everywhere. It's going on to various degrees. It's going on everywhere. Everywhere. Cincinnati's got NIL. But it's obviously going on to different degrees with different levels of success. But for Alabama, the thing about NIL, we make a huge deal about it. And it is, again, it's a major factor. I will liken it to the transfer portal. We talked transfer portal for the first hour or so and looked at all the athletes who are being signed and who are leaving and arriving at different programs and the ones who are left, but it's overblown. The NIL is making a difference in these athletes' lives financially. Either it's just a game changer, $3 million, or it's a nice addition. It's $40,000. That's phenomenal. I wish somebody would hand me $40,000 for my next podcast. So that's still significant money to help, to aid. It's not going to change your life. So back to this, is my point about NIL is that it's not changing the landscape. Not yet. Will it? It's not changed the landscape of the best programs. So Alabama is still going to finish with a top, I would guess they're going to be in the top 3. They're definitely going to be in the top 5. But they only have 6 commits right now, so they're number 19. But they've got the number 1 player. They only have 6 commits and 3 or 5 stars. Do you think Alabama and Texas Tech are going to be hanging out together in December? Alabama, Texas Tech, Wisconsin, and Cincinnati hanging out together? So this class that Alabama is forging right now compared to Clemson Clemson, a nice class, doing a nice job. Actually, their player rating, it's okay. It's fringe top 10. No 5 stars, 6 4 stars, and 2 3 stars. Can you win with 3 stars? Absolutely, you can win with 3 stars. Not a ton of them, though. You can't win with a ton of them. I had a conversation like this with a buddy that you would all well know the other day when they made a comment about, hey, you can have your 4 and 5 stars. I'll take my 3 stars that are level-headed and tough and determined and are loyal. Okay, and I'll see you at 6 and 6. All right, I'll see you in the Gasparilla Bowl. It's just the way it is. Anybody who says that recruiting rankings don't matter is a fool, is a moron. Maybe they're not a moron in other areas of life. Maybe they're an accountant or an engineer and they're really, really smart. They just have not applied that to college football understanding. Yeah, it matters immensely. And then anytime you get into an argument with somebody who doesn't believe that the rankings mean much, then they grab the one player, they grab aberrations. That's not the way it works. You can grab every aberration in the world. Yes, when there are, so there's going to be roughly 25 players signed by each program. There are roughly 70 Power 5 programs now. So that's what? That's 1,700 players. And in all of college football, 133 times 25, it's like 2,800 players. Yes, there are going to be recruiting misses out of 2,800. But if this doesn't prove the recruiting rankings, and I had Tom Luganbill on here a couple weeks ago, you have to check out those videos with Tom Luganbill. And I know that I state that, and if I don't drop the link, you're not going to go grab it because I just know human nature. So I need to do a better marketing job on a number of these things. But we had a great conversation with Tom Luganbill, and a lot of, even the first video didn't do that well. But anyway, a lot of people watched the first video and not the second one. And actually, the second one was better of the two parts in talking about all of this. And I told Tom Luganbill, I said, you guys do an amazing job evaluating 17-year-olds. You start to evaluate them at 15. And you guys, I could argue, are better at evaluating 17-year-olds than NFL personnel directors and scouts of rating 21 and 22-year-olds. So think about that. Think about how much more difficult that is to evaluate the potential of a 17-year-old versus the potential of a 21 or 22-year-old. Oh, this is the question of the night right there. Let's stop the show, and then I'll pick up my point, because this basically is everything that's needed to do what we do here at the Voice of College Football. Jason, thank you so much for your question about how do you sponsor a show. Thank you so much for that. Sponsor the Voice of College Football. Contact us. That's the word. Contact us at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And we will talk about what we can do to benefit you. So it's more about you. And we want to benefit your personal brand, your business, whatever you do. Or if you're just contributing, then that's phenomenal as well. But if you've got your own business situation, your corporation, your LLC, your personal brand, your podcast, whatever you've got going, we want to benefit you. So please contact us at MarkRogersTV at Gmail if you would like to sponsor. So thank you so much for that question, Jason. But think about this, folks. Let this sink in. You've got college coaches and then the folks who are employed by 247 Rivals and the other services that are scouts, that are talent evaluators, and they start watching these kids at 15. And yes, they're kids. I don't know why we get so offended by that. Like, I don't know how many times I've been in a conversation in the last 5 years where somebody's called me out on saying kids, or they've apologized for calling them kids. They're kids. They're kids. It's not a crime to be a kid. So anyway, they're 15-year-old kids. They're 16-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids. So they have to make a final evaluation on them as 17-year-old kids. And they're really good. And Luganville also made an extremely valuable point, and that's they can only evaluate the talent. How many more players get derailed by outside distractions at the age of 17 than ones that are 21 or 22 who have proven I can push aside the distractions to focus on my career and make it to the NFL? Think about the gap between those two achievements. You're 17, you're an amazing, phenomenal athlete with all this talent, but you get derailed by hanging with the wrong kids, not getting along with your teachers, breaking up with your girlfriend, and all that. Well, the 22-year-old who is going to be a top 3 round pick in the NFL draft, he faced all that too. But he proved that he could overcome all that, whatever faced him in life. His mom got ill. His dad lost his job. He broke up with his girlfriend. He ran with the wrong crowd for a while. He overcame all that to become a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. So the accuracy of the collegiate rankings, meaning the high school rankings going into college, are even more phenomenal when you consider they can't predict attention, focus, discipline. They're not evaluating that. They're evaluating their ability on a football field. The NFL evaluators are doing all of that. They're not just saying, I'm ranking this particular athlete as an athlete. No, they are evaluating that player for a job. So think of it this way. Whatever your personal industry or job. I don't know if any of you have been in the process of hiring people. So I used to interview people, but it wasn't, I was interviewing them for a corporation. So I wanted to do a great job, and I wanted to do my employer, I wanted to do them justice and fulfill my role and do a good job of, and I didn't hire them. I made a suggestion. I interviewed and made a suggestion and an evaluation, but I didn't hire them. But still, I had a part in the process, a small part in the process. Well, that's completely different than think of your industry, whatever that is. There's a complete difference between bringing somebody in and saying, do X, Y, and Z. Do some accounting. We're going to give you some exercises in accounting. Or this car needs this type of maintenance. We're gonna test you out as a mechanic. So that's just the job skill level versus, okay, well, this person's phenomenal at the task and the skill set of the job, but oh, you know what? They got 8 DUIs and and they didn't show up to work 32% of the time at their last job. Well, that's what NFL teams have to do. They have to evaluate the entire person. Now, most of that is talent on the football field, but a portion of that is the entire evaluation of the person. So what these college evaluators are doing is different. Number one, they're just evaluating their playing ability. The NFL evaluators are evaluating their employment eligibility. I saw so many ridiculous posts about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jalen Hyatt when Hyatt was selected 73rd in the NFL draft and who should have won the Biletnikoff Award, that it was so pathetic and ridiculous. Got into a bunch of fights on social media with a bunch of knuckleheads who don't understand the process. All right. Appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. Again, we've got the phone lines open. We will take your calls. Also, keep in mind, as we speak, Trojan Conquest Live is on the USC channel, and we are only 30 minutes away from our USC program breakdown. That's over on the USC channel as well. So basically, you leave here, you go to the USC channel, and you're set for the next couple hours with Tim and Rick and Trojan Conquest Live, and then with Tony and myself as we do a USC breakdown. We break it down. You will love it. Not going to go into the logistics right now, but we will see you right now over on the USC channel. And keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football. We've got the ACC Power Rankings. Check it out. Let us know what you think. And also, we'll unveil the Notre Dame poll that we took. We've got about 1,200 votes in, and we will unveil that and talk about that soon. And that's Notre Dame Big Ten. Does Notre Dame belong in the Big Ten? Should Notre Dame be a part of the Big Ten? Yes or no? Check out that poll. It's on the community page, and please vote. And again, Trojan Conquest Live is on right now. We've got our USC program breakdown at 9 Eastern on the USC channel, and then we'll be back here tomorrow at 6, Monday at 6 for Big Ten Live right here at the Voice of College Football.